We have two presentations this evening. The first one is from Chris McMorland. He's the director of the Morris County Division of Mosquito Control. You may recall he was here last year.
Thanks for having me back, Mayor Ritter. And again, what I'm going to, last year when I was here, we kind of really talked mostly about Zika and mosquitoes. This year we're going to talk a little bit about Zika because it's still in the news, it's still a concern, still something on everybody's mind. But we're going to talk ticks too, which I did not do last year, just because there seems to be a lot of questions and a lot of concerns regarding ticks, especially this season. So Zika virus, again, what is it? Well, it's an arbovirus, meaning it's something that's transmitted by a blood-sucking insect. In fact, most of the diseases, well, all the diseases I'll talk about tonight are arboviruses of some form. Mosquitoes, fleas, ticks, there's other ones, but those are the main ones that come to mind. From a mosquito standpoint, there are a whole litany of diseases that you can get, Zika included, but there's also yellow fever, dengue, chikungunya. The one that's probably most important, I know Zika's on everybody's mind, but West Nile is still #1 here in Morris County. Still in New Jersey, it's going to be #1. We do have other ones, Eastern equine encephalitis, which we've been kind of dealing with a little bit. Zika, for obvious reasons, because it's definitely on the news and it's what's on everybody's mind. So arboviruses, sometimes you have them, sometimes you don't. Like, for example, West Nile. It's been here for 20-something years. You don't really hear about it in the news much. Some years we have a lot of it, but we keep it down. Some years I have trouble finding it, but it's here. It's always going to be here. Everything, like I said, all these viruses are cyclical. When it comes to mosquitoes, it's going to be very rain dependent. You know, are we going to have a lot of rain? We're going to have a lot of mosquitoes. The odd thing is, typically you would think that that's what's going to make a lot of virus activity. No. Usually when we have a lot of rain, we have a lot of nuisance mosquitoes, so I get a lot of calls regarding those. Those are the ones that, you know, typically you can't walk outside without getting inundated with, you know, 10,000 of them flying on you and getting sucked into your door like a vacuum when you open it. It's during dry periods that I actually have a lot more problems when it comes to West Nile virus itself. Zika is kind of a strange animal. We're all still learning about it ourselves. You know, it tends to be mostly something down in South America and the Caribbean. You know, when it comes to New Jersey, the main thing that you need is a proper vector. So the proper vector for Zika virus is the Aedes aegypti mosquito. The beauty of New Jersey is we do not have the Aedes aegypti mosquito. It does materialize every once in a while. It travels, whether it's as an egg or somehow it just winds up here. But there are no established populations of Aedes aegypti in New Jersey. Thank goodness. That's why Florida and Texas and some of these other places have so many problems, because they have a lot of aegypti. And aegypti is definitely something that's totally a man feeder. It likes to live in man-made containers. It just loves us. So I mean, it's a problem. We do, however, have another one. It's a cousin of the aegypti. It's called Aedes albopictus, or is more commonly known as the Asian tiger mosquito. If you look on the picture, the one on the right that's kind of black with a nice white stripe, it's actually a very pretty mosquito when you see it flying around. That's the Asian tiger mosquito. The one on the left is the aegypti. Again, it's brown. It's kind of got like a lyre shape on its thorax. It doesn't, you probably wouldn't notice it if it was flying around. But again, since we don't have that one, we do worry about the albopictus. We have populations of it in Morris County. In fact, when it infests the neighborhood, it actually becomes pest #1. It's a rather difficult critter to get rid of. It really relies on, we need the homeowner to buy in on it, meaning that it's a container breeder. We need the homeowner to just clean up their yard. We need the neighbor to clean up their yard. We need to eliminate the habitat, is basically what I'm saying. It's a very difficult mosquito to treat because it'll utilize anything. If a bottle cap blows over and you have it sitting in your yard, they'll utilize that little amount of water. So us looking for habitat, yeah, we could pick out the main sources and, you know, try to treat them and knock them down or control them. But unless people are going out and actually cleaning up stuff in their yard, we'll never get rid of it. And it doesn't fly far, so it's only going to it goes from one neighbor to the next neighbor to the next neighbor, and pretty soon the whole neighborhood's infested, and then it becomes a real big issue. So this mosquito is the only one, well, right now, there's still a lot of studies going on out there regarding Zika, that has the possibility of transmitting Zika virus, or the potential rather. The nice thing, well, it's not so nice, but it is nice from a Zika transmission cycle. This one is a little less selective in its feeding habits. It's quite content to go feed on your dog, on your cat, on the raccoon that happens to come down out of the tree at night. It'll feed on just about anything, not just solely humans. So is a vector? Yeah, but it's not just solely feeding on us, so it makes it a little bit less of a problem when it comes to transmitting diseases. Don't get me wrong, it's got its whole other litany of diseases that thing can transmit itself. That's the dengue mosquito that a lot of people don't. Chikungunya. There's, like I said, when it just comes to Zika, it's not as bad. So Zika cases in the U.S. and New Jersey. I'm sorry, this is just a hair old. I forget to look up at the latest one, but I don't think it changed much for the state of New Jersey at least. In Morris County, it's hard to read. We actually had 9 cases last year. You got to bear in mind, nothing in New Jersey was locally transmitted. This is all travel related. These are people that have traveled down to somewhere in the Caribbean, somewhere in South America, contracted the virus there, brought it back. Now, why is that a concern? Well, because you do have a certain period of time when you're viremic. If you happen to live where there's a bunch of Aedes albopictus, Asian tigers floating around, there is the potential that those mosquitoes could pick the virus up and transmit it to the next person. So when we get a report, typically, we'll go around to the neighborhood that, wherever the resident happens to live, and we'll really scour the area and try to control any albopictus that's going on. We try to minimize, and providing that they're listening to whatever the health department or their doctor is saying, staying inside and until they're not viremic, it should minimize any impact it has up here in Morris County. Now, there are a few cases in the United States that were local. Again, these were mostly in Florida and Texas. I mean, I think it was the Miami-Dade area was really in the news a lot last year because they did have some areas of local transmission. But again, we're talking Aegypti, and not only are we talking Aegypti, they got both down there. They have Aegypti and Asian tigers, so they got the double whammy going on down there. Mosquito prevention. You know what? It's the same thing. I've been in mosquito control for 20-something years, and we'll leave it at that. I've been telling people the same exact thing for 20-something years. Most of the time people listen. Sometimes they do not. There are a ton of things that you can do to protect yourself. Number one is use a repellent. If you're going to be outside where it's mosquito habitat or it's, especially at dusk and dawn, wear a mosquito repellent. DEET, great product. Picaridin, another great product. There is the IR3434, which I do not have listed. That's the product in Avon Skin So Soft. A lot of people have heard about that. So you can get something not DEET related if you choose not to wear DEET. There is also the lemon of eucalyptus. Now, these are the ones that are all recommended by the CDC. I would not recommend another product if it was not recommended by the CDC. You'll see a ton of other stuff. I mean, you could take your chances with it. I mean, there's a ton of these botanicals and other things, but if there's no science behind it, I'm not going to tell you to put it on. If it makes you feel better, help yourself. The other thing you could do, long pants and shirts. Is it practical in the middle of summer when it's like 9,000 degrees up? No, but you know what? If you want to avoid mosquito bites, that's what some of the things you need to do. And again, we discussed avoid certain times of the day. Dawn and dusk tend to be the most active. However, if you live on certain areas, like along the rivers or something like that, trust me, they're going to be bothering you all day. It might just pick up, but are you going to notice the difference between 50 of them coming at you or 500? Probably not. You're just going to be running for your car or running wherever you can go. That's when you call us. We'll come down, take a look, and see what we can do to help. Ticks. So let's talk ticks real fast, very briefly. Ticks are arachnids, right? They're not technically insects. They have 8 legs rather than 3. They only have 2 body parts. They're pretty interesting critters as they go through an egg, a larva, a nymph, and an adult stage. Now, believe it or not, it's the larval and nymph stage you got to really watch out for, because you know why? You could barely see them if they're on you. I mean, it looked like the tiniest of freckle, and you have to stare at it to see if it's moving. There are 3 types of ticks in this area that you need to watch out for. The black-legged tick, which was also called the deer tick. You'll hear that interchanged a lot, but it's technically the black-legged tick. The American dog tick, which is the one that most people think about a lot of times if they're not thinking about the deer tick. It's usually when it's on your dog and all of a sudden becomes like this huge raisin that you got to pull off, and it's kind of yucky. But when they're adults, they're so big you can see them walking around on you. There is the Lone Star tick in the state of New Jersey. We're probably a little on here north for it. maybe right on the border. Again, I don't see it all that much. My colleagues down in central and southern Jersey see it all the time. It's actually rather aggressive little tick. I've been down doing some studies where I've actually seen these ones coming after you. Normally they're just kind of sitting on a blade of grass waiting for you to walk by. The Lone Star tick actually seeks you out, which makes them kind of interesting and a little spooky all at the same time. So prevention. Again, repellent. That's the beauty of the insect repellent, is that it works for both ticks and mosquitoes. Again, the same active ingredients. In fact, I left some literature on the back that has all kinds of information regarding ticks. Tick habitat. This is the one where you can definitely try to minimize your contact with ticks by staying in a tick-free area or a tick-safe area. They do not like manicured lawns. So if you're hanging out in manicured lawns, chances of you coming in contact with a tick are minimal. It's when you go in that border area, that's the worst. That's where they're all hanging out. That's where they're waiting. That's where the larvae and the nymph are hanging out underneath the litter layer. That's where they're questing and waiting for, typically like for black-legged, like a deer to come by. And the funny thing is, it's not just deer that the black-legged tick like. I mean, the main culprit, or one of the biggest culprits in the whole Lyme disease transmission cycle, is white-footed mice. So, I mean, they're feeding on them. They're feeding on deer. They're feeding on us. They're feeding everything. Tick check. I can't tell you how important it is to do a tick check on yourself, do a tick check on your dog after spending any time out in the woods. You do have a little bit of time to get the ticks off. You just got to be very thorough. You got to check everywhere. I mean, I do a lot of camping and hiking with my kids, and trust me, we do a very good tick check when we're done, because you do not want any of these go unnoticed and start hanging on. So we've been trying to put out some more literature. This is one of the ones that we just kind of created for to put out by trail systems and stuff. And it's really, again, it's really to try to, with all the public education that we do, all the literature that we drop, we try to come to as many like festivals and do as many talks as possible just to educate the public regarding ticks and mosquitoes, mostly mosquitoes. Ticks is kind of, I don't want to say a side project, but it's just something that goes hand in hand with us. But this is one that we've created for people that like to hike and like to be out in the woods. And again, it's all the stuff that I've basically been talking about, but it's brand new for us this year, and we're hoping that we get it posted in some of the parks and stuff so people have a chance to take a look at it and help themselves. And again, I can't stress enough, use an insect repellent. This one's a really good chart, and it shows you about how long you're going to get of protection for the concentration of the active ingredient that you use. Now, this does go up to a 20-50% D. I personally never recommend anything higher than 30. 30% is probably the max that you'll ever need. 50 is way overkill. If you have children, make sure that you're applying something on children. Make sure that you're applying something at a lower dosage rate or a lower percentage of active ingredient. What you just need to be mindful of is remember that it doesn't last nearly as long and you might need to reapply. But again, even with kids, like a 5%, a 7% is perfect. Just be mindful about it. And there's a ton of products out there. And there's a lot of good resources that you can go to too, because I didn't harp on them, but ticks have their own list of diseases, and I was trying to keep this, sort of to the minimum. But I mean, Lyme's in Morris County, Lyme's in New Jersey, we're like ground zero probably for like the country. We have a ton of it, and people just need to be very careful about it. So I would always recommend go check out the CDC webpage, New Jersey Department of Health, a lot of good information regarding there. Local health departments have a lot of good information. My own webpage has a lot of good information, a lot of literature and handouts that you can do for both ticks and for Zika. CDC is going to have the most latest and greatest and the best updates regarding Zika virus itself. Plus, it'll give you any kind of travel warnings and stuff as to where it's been very active. Even if you decide to go down there, I would follow all my recommendations by wearing like a repellent, trying to avoid some of those times a day. I know it's rather difficult when the long sleeves and pants might not be so practical when you're down in, whatever island you choose, but, there are things that you can do even when away. think that's it. Anybody have any questions?
I had a quick question. In terms of spraying for mosquitoes, is there a schedule for that, or how do you determine where you spray and when you spray? And
Okay, then that's a great question. Schedule? No, I do not believe in any kind of schedule. What we are driven by what they call an integrated pest management program. I need to see numbers. We put some science behind what we're doing. So what we'll do is if we get a problem, just call. We're a public agency, just call us up, we'll come out, we'll first see what we're dealing with, see if we can control the larvae right off the bat, collect some specimens, because we need to see what we're dealing with, like what species we're dealing with. Remember, there's about 40 different species here in Morris County, so we want to see what kind we're dealing, what we're working with. We will then treat whatever is as necessary. Some of the locations that we've been having lots of problems with have been up in like Montville and Lincoln Park, but they sit on like Great Peace Meadows and some of these huge floodplains, and we've had a lot of rain. It's kind of rare to see the sun now, or so it seems. So I mean, we've been dealing with a lot of those issues, and then we'll treat however we deem it. Whatever is going to be the most effective, whether it be using a backpack sprayer, an all-terrain vehicle sprayer, and we go into the woods and we try to treat where they're hiding out and hanging out before they come out. Sometimes when it gets so bad, I mean, we do like the truck-mounted stuff, and we'll drive around neighborhoods. And that's always typically done very, later at night and stuff like that when there are less people out and the mosquitoes are pretty active. But yeah, to have like a regular schedule, I mean, I don't think it's appropriate. I mean, you end up putting out stuff when you don't need to put out stuff. You end up wasting money. There's just lots of things wrong with it.
I have a question on that, Chris. From a homeowner's perspective, there's a lot of vendors out there that are selling, the mosquito fogging or the mosquito bombs for their backyards that will supposedly reduce the population of mosquitoes throughout the summer. What's your view in terms of the effectiveness of that, and your advice to local residents who their doors get knocked on all day long about this?
I know, it's a rather sticky situation, I guess, for myself. All right, so from what I gather, a lot of these companies, what they end up using is some kind of a barrier treatment. It's probably no different than, you can go to like a hardware store and buy like a cutter that you attach to your hose and treat all your shrubs and give yourselves a barrier. Will they work? Trust me, I know some areas where I wouldn't want to put any money on, I mean, again, those put you on a schedule, and if you feel better with it, there's so many things that you can do yourself, my personal opinion, and, we are a free service. We will come out and check and treat as necessary. I mean, it's not something we do for, like, if you're having, like, a picnic in your backyard or something. I mean, but if you have a legitimate problem, yeah, we're going to come out and we're going to help you out. So from that standpoint, I don't know. You'd have to. I would research it. I'll put it that way.
All right. Thank you.
Chris, I've got a couple of questions.
Yes.
Obviously, our National Wildlife Preserve is right around the corner, and
Yep.
here you are, Morris County. You can't go in and tell the National Wildlife Federation what to do about the Great Swamp, and yet it's such a breeding ground, obviously, and it's huge. So what can residents do, or what can you do around that barrier area to help residents who deal with the Great Swamp?
Yeah, the Great Swamp's an interesting character in that, as you said, I have no jurisdiction over it whatsoever. I mean, it's federal property. They, part of their philosophy is that mosquitoes are part of the natural part of nature, and it happens, yeah. So, I mean, when it comes to like treating, I mean, we can go right up, we can treat somebody's property if we had to, even if they border the swamp. I mean, we would actually make our applications to right, on the resident's property. I would suspect, I mean, I don't, if there was some kind of virus activity or something that I'm sure we would work something out with them that we would have to do like, one-time treatment or, it's not unheard of. Other colleagues of mine do treat like certain, wildlife management areas if they have to, but, from a resident standpoint, I mean, it's going to be tough because no matter, even if I treat it's only going to take a little bit of time before those mosquitoes come back. And it's only for a very brief season. I mean, don't get me wrong. I would love to live right next to the Great Swamp. It'd be pretty cool, I think.
Right.
But,
Now, the other thing you mentioned was actually spraying neighborhoods. And we've had so much attention paid over the last few years about pesticide-free neighborhoods, pesticide-free parks. We have Colony Swim Club here, which is in the woods, essentially. So how do we balance that? And if you were going to spray a neighborhood because of a serious mosquito issue in a neighborhood, how would you alert people, and can they opt out, so to speak, because they don't want pesticides on their lawn? What are you going to do with the neighbors who are complaining about it? How do we balance that?
That's, again, another very interesting situation that we have run into in the past. And so let's break it down in sections. So first of all, chances of me doing like a neighborhood, I'm going to have to see a lot of service requests coming in. I mean, a lot of neighbors complaining. It's one of those things where the main thing I would say is check our webpage. I post everything well into advance where we're going to be. Even stuff that I'm not required to post, I post it because I just want people to know where we're going, what we're doing, why we're out there, And I will let you know if it's because there's some kind of West Nile related or virus related, or if it's just nuisance related. But when it comes to like people trying to like opt out or something along those lines, typically I don't really have that much of an issue with people trying to like people calling me up to opt out. Trust me, at like 11 o'clock at night, if the truck's coming down, we're not going to know exactly which yard is yours or which yard is not yours. If we see people, yeah, we turn off the machine and drive past them, and unfortunately, it leaves a gap that the mosquitoes are still hanging out in. But we're very mindful of people's philosophies towards insecticides and what they're doing. And again, you got to bear in mind, the stuff that we're using is public health insecticide. It's meant to be broadcast, out. It's it's such a minute amount. It's just atomized basically and floating through the air. You're killing mosquitoes, not elephants. It's not a lot in your product, I mean, you wouldn't even know it.
Pets and children.
I always just give everybody the same warning that I want. Technically you're probably all right, but I mean, I would, if you're worried about like kids' toys and stuff that are outside, just hose them off. I mean, trust me, the stuff is gone within like, just a couple hours. I mean, just from sunlight hitting it.
At 11 o'clock at night, how does the neighborhood know that you've been there?
We probably wouldn't even know. I mean, hopefully they know because they get some relief from the mosquitoes is what I'm what the whole, what the end game would hopefully be. But I mean, sometimes that happens and sometimes we have to come out again, Not so much in Chatham Township. I don't remember, there's not too many areas that we have that kind of an issue going on as far as like trying to do like neighborhoods and stuff. We will do smaller locations, usually ATV mount, and ATV, you don't even know we're there. We're in the woods. Just treating something and taking care of something. The other ones that we're very mindful of too is we're very good with our beekeepers. We have a lot of them here in Morris County. We have about 100 of them. So we coordinate and we let them know, what we're going to be doing so they can cover hives and, and keep an eye on their own hive. And this way, nobody here is trying to, we're trying to just kill our target species and, keep everybody safe and, hopefully, improve quality of life, because there's certain places that people won't even, you can't even step outside and enjoy your yard. It's just so awful.
All right, it's great to know though. If they go to the website, they can find information on.
And the other thing is too, if people are interested, what they can do is if they call and send us a letter with their information on it, we will make sure that we give them a 12-hour notification. We'll call you up and say, hey, we're going to be in your neighborhood, blah, 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 so that you can do whatever you want to do with it,
That's great. That's very important. Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions,
Anything
Chris? Well, thank you very much, Chris.
You're
Appreciate
very welcome.
it.